Are you working with any children who use communication devices to talk to others, whether it's a sign language or some sort of an AAC system or a talker where they push a button and it speaks? There's lots of different ways that our students with communication challenges can get their message across if speech isn't working for them. So on today's episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast, we're going to be talking about how to build those therapy plans for children who are using some sort of AAC or augmentative alternative communication. I am speech language pathologist Carrie Clark, and I'll be your host today. And I see right inside the hub, we have several people joining us live. Welcome. Hi, Maria. Hi, Kim. Hi, JC. Hi, Becca. All right. If you would like to attend one of our live recordings of our podcast, you can join us in the hub for free at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. Those of you who are in here with me live, hey, Tiffany, hey, Jenny, you guys can pop over into the chat and say hello, and you can leave questions as we go along, and I'll take those throughout the recording. Now, I did want to point out, I've had a couple people say that they have missed our lives. They didn't realize they were happening. So the tip I have for you today, don't forget that we do have an app. So we have an app in the Apple App Store, and we have an app in Android. It is the Speech and Language Kids Hub. That is the name of the app. And if you download the app on your mobile phone and then turn on notifications, you will know whenever I go live, which I try to schedule them, but sometimes I just pop on randomly and do fun events too. So turn your notifications on so you don't miss those. Hey guys, welcome. Okay, so today we're talking about AAC. So let's talk a little bit first about what AAC is, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to actually build your therapy sessions and what to do to help a child who is communicating via AAC. Okay, so like I said, AAC is augmentative or alternative communication, and it is a method by which children can communicate if spoken speech isn't efficient enough to get their needs and wants met, okay? So we're talking about children who are not talking at all. We're talking about children who can talk, but their speech is very unintelligible, and so it's hard for them to be understood. Or sometimes we're even talking about children who can be understood most of the time, but they may have a condition that causes them to fatigue or to have specific times when they can't communicate as well. And maybe that is due to some sort of social anxiety even, where they can communicate usually, but when they get overloaded, they need another method with which to communicate, okay? Now, there are a ton of different types of AAC out there because the cool thing about this area is that it's very inclusive. We want everyone to communicate in whatever way works for them. So there are all these different options of ways children can use these devices, these systems to communicate. So I'm going to give you a list of several just so you know what's out there. We do have other podcasts and resources over at Speech and Language Kids that go more into depth about choosing devices or apps or whatever you're looking for. But this is just going to be an overview so we can get to the therapy. Okay, so types of AAC systems and devices. So gestures and facial expressions are still communication. So sometimes we start there with our kiddos when we are trying to work our way towards some more formalized communication and language. We start with those gestures and those facial expressions. Another one that they can use their body for is sign language. Let me adjust my mic here. So we can help children learn sign language to communicate if their mouth is unable to communicate those words. We have picture-based systems, also known as low-tech AAC. These are things like the PECS, Picture Exchange System, or printed communication boards, which we have some of inside the hub if you're looking for some of those, with either core words or fringe vocabulary, either one. Core words are the words we use a whole lot throughout all of our day. They build up most of what we say. And then fringe words are only specifically used in certain circumstances, okay? All right, so that's a picture-based. We also have a low-tech option that is text-based. So being able to type what you need to say. I actually had a friend of a friend recently contact me saying that they were looking for an option for a child who had to have their jaw wired shut because of an accident. And so it was a child who can communicate It was a teenager who just needed a way to communicate right now until her jaw healed. And so for something like that, using a keyboard if they're able to type quickly, or even a phone if they can type their words and then have that text to speech to speak it out loud, can be a really great option as well. Now, once we get past that, we have more complicated systems or more complex systems that allow for maybe more fluent conversations and more options for communicating, right? Because if you're using a picture board, you are stuck with the pictures that are on there, right? But we have what are called speech generating devices. And these are high-tech options that are things like tablets or dedicated AAC devices. I call these talkers, where you push a button and it says the word that you want, or it says a full sentences, however it's programmed, okay? So that's something with speech output, and then beyond that, we can even get into different access methods. So if a child is not able to push a button, there's still options available for them to be able to communicate using AAC. One option is an eye gaze system, where they simply look at what they want to say, and if they hold their gaze on that button long enough, it will speak the message. Very cool. There's also switches that can be used. If they have control over, let's say, maybe one leg, they can bump the switch with their knee when it's scanning through and it gets to the word they want. So lots and lots of options for AAC. No matter what the challenge is, we can usually find a way to help them communicate. All right, so let's talk then about the therapy. And when I say therapy, I am speaking to my speech language pathologists out there, my speechies, but I'm also speaking to parents and caregivers and babysitters and teachers and therapists and anyone else who's working with a child, because communication doesn't just happen in our speech therapy sessions, right? Our role as speech language pathologists is often to get the ball rolling and to get them established and to find something that works. But then we want everyone on the child's team to be supporting them in learning how to use that AAC, because that's where we're going to see the most change, okay? So when we are looking at therapy for AAC, what I want you to take away the most, well, there's two main points here. The two things I want you to take away are that, number one, we are focusing on the communication, not the technology. And number two, model. Okay, so let's talk about those two things and then we'll kind of go into some specifics. So what I mean by we're focusing on the communication and not the technology is we should not be writing goals for a child to push a button, to be able to find this button on their screen, to be able to clear the message bar so that they can type a new message. That is not the goal. We don't care if they can use technology. I mean, we do, but not for this purpose. For this purpose, we care if they can communicate something effectively with someone else. That's what this is all about, okay? So our goals should be things like communicating our basic wants and needs. Don't write a goal exactly that wording because that's too vague. You need to specify, but that's what we're going for. We're going for being able to tell someone else when they are hurt, being able to ask for something, being able to participate in a classroom routine where everyone goes around and says, good morning, right? There's all these different ways that we use communication, and that is what we want for our AAC users as well. So sometimes it helps to switch our brain and to say, okay, instead of thinking about what do I want them to do on the device, how would I want them to communicate if they were a speaking child or a child who had intelligible speech? What would be the communications that I want them to be able to use? And then we say, okay, now how do we apply the technology to support that? All right? And again, I'm going to go over specifics, so hang with me. The other thing that I want you to remember is model. So the best way to get a child to use AAC is to use it around them first. Just like when we have a baby or a toddler who is learning to speak, they are hearing spoken language throughout their environment all day, every day. If no one else is using this AAC device to communicate, the child is going to be very unlikely to just go, oh, I know what to do, pick it up and figure it out, right? But if everyone is using the same system, then we are able to provide these models for the child to learn from. So if we're using sign language, everyone should be using some signs while they speak. That doesn't mean they need to be completely fluent in American Sign Language and be signing every single word that comes out of their mouth. We start wherever we are, right? If you can only learn a couple signs right now, great. Learn those couple signs, but sign them every time that word comes up in conversation. Okay? So if we have a child with an AAC device, a talker, and we are asking them if they want a cracker, we can model by saying, do you want a cracker? And then pushing the cracker button on their AAC device so that they see, yes, that's where cracker is, right? And now they have a model that they can repeat, just like a baby, just like a toddler, learning to repeat words that they hear. Okay? And while we're using the AAC, we're also using our words. Because guess what? If that child starts talking tomorrow, we're not going to keep working on a goal to push buttons on an AAC device. We want them to speak. We want them to communicate with whatever way is going to be most effective for them. And if they can speak, that's usually going to be more effective than trying to find a button, right? And that's the other thing I hear sometimes is, well, if I give them a device, then they're never going to try to talk. And I hear you, but the research shows that that's not the case. In fact, sometimes we actually see the opposite, where once we provide some sort of AAC, the child now has a backup that makes it easier for them to communicate, so it takes the pressure off, and they're actually able to learn to communicate and to speak more quickly than if we don't provide that, okay? So don't worry about it preventing speech. That's not what the research shows. It's not what I've seen time and time again. What we want to make sure is that they have a way to communicate those basic wants and needs and whatever that looks like, okay? All right, let me scroll down here. All right, so for this next part, I'm going to kind of go over three different levels that you might be using AAC for. And those of you who are inside the hub with me, hey, there's a bunch of you in here now. Welcome, guys. You guys can chat in, go to the chat and type your questions in if you have any questions. But the levels that I'm going to show you are straight from our AAC pathway. So this is inside the Speech and Language Kids Hub at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. And we have a pathway mapped out for all these different challenges that kids have. And one of our pathways is the AAC pathway. And that is broken down into a beginner level, intermediate level, and advanced level. Okay? So at the beginner level, all we want is them to start to use their AAC for some basic communication. So at this stage, we're really going to be focusing on that modeling, giving as many models as we can. We also really want to focus on core vocabulary. So I touched on this before, but let me give you some examples. So core words or core vocabulary are those basic words that we can use in a lot of different situations. I can use no or stop or all done. I can use those all day long because there's going to be a lot of reasons for me to use those. Things like want or go or trying to think of some other ones. We have whole boards of core words inside the hub. If you need some AAC boards, they're in the visual aids section. But those core words, those are the ones we want to start with because they give the child words that they can use throughout the day. If you teach them cracker, well, that's a good one if they are hungry for a cracker, but that's one use case, right? That's the only time we can really use that word is when a cracker is present or we are wanting a cracker to be present, right? But go, I can use that to make a toy go. I can use that to say that I want to go somewhere. I can use that to indicate that I want movement, like a swing or something that I'm doing with my body that gives me some fun feelings that I like, right? There's lots of different uses of the word go, which is actually one of my first ones that I do because it's easy to say, and there's a lot of fun things that we can do to play with that one. So what we are doing is we are modeling these core words. We are providing the opportunities for the child to use the device, the signs, the system, whatever we are using. Sometimes maybe we're doing a lot of these to figure out which one they like. So maybe we're saying go, we're signing go, and then we're pushing it on an AAC device that has a picture of go, right? And so we're using all these different methods so that they have options and they can tell us which one they like by choosing one, okay? So beginning level, we're just trying to get some of those basic wants and needs met. Hi, if you have a child who really loves other people and they want to use something like hi as a greeting, we can do, requesting to be all done or to stop an activity or to do it again. We can have that one be one of our core words, right? We can have a core word for ouch in case something hurts because there might be times that they want to communicate that to us, right? So having a lot of different ways for them to interact, but focusing on those basic core words. Okay. Once we get that, and let me say that sometimes we spend a long, long time in that realm, okay? Sometimes we're in that beginning level for a long time. We might be doing the beginning level while we're also working on our speech sounds, right? Because just because we're working on AAC doesn't mean we can't work on speech. We can do both, right? But once we get past that, okay, they've got some core words, they can communicate some basic wants and needs, they're doing pretty well. Then we can move up to the intermediate level. And now our goal is to expand their AAC use, okay? So if you have a child who can communicate some basic wants and needs with, let's say, a talker, and their speech still hasn't caught up, they can then use their talker to build full sentences, to practice grammar and vocab that their mouth isn't capable of practicing yet. And so by the time their speech catches up, we still want their language skills or their word knowledge and grammar and all of that. We want that to be where it needs to be so that once their mouth catches up and can say those words, they're able to form those full sentences. We don't want them to have to start from scratch once they get to 7 or 8 years old, right? So while we are working on those speech sounds, we can also be working on expanding the AAC use to create longer utterances and to also communicate for more different varied functions, right? We don't want them just being able to request. There's way more to life than requesting things. So some of the functions that you might want to focus on, we have expressing rejection or cessation. I don't want that. I'm all done. Expressing recurrence. I do want that again, or I want more of that. Labeling actions and labeling options, right? Objects. We want them to be able to talk about what's around them because kids love doing that. They come up to you with a ball and they say, ball. And you're like, yes, you have a ball, right? Being able to label things. Using descriptors, adjectives, right? We want them to use those. We want to indicate possession. That's mine. That's a common word in the toddler years, right? Because it's really important to them. Understanding what's theirs, what's someone else's, right? Those are all great things to talk about. And again, if you're not sure, think about what other children their age are communicating. If they're being able to communicate something that this child can't, let's find a way to do that. Are the other kids telling jokes? Program a knock-knock joke on that AAC device. Whatever it is that they want to communicate, we should have a way for them to do it. Let's see, and a couple others, locatives, location words like in, on, under, those are good ones. And then self-advocacy, being able to speak up for yourself or tell people what you want or need, or even a button that says, I can't speak, but I can use this device to talk to you. Please be patient while I find the button I need. And they can push that and then be looking for the button, right? There's so many cool options out, guys. I love it all. Okay, so that's our intermediate stage. We're going beyond our first words. We're going beyond those basic wants and needs, and we're expanding out into some more communicative functions and some longer utterances. All right? Then when we get to our advanced level, now we're looking at the full spectrum of communication skills. So if this were a speaking child, what are the communication skills that they might need? Well, you would probably want them to be able to participate in classroom discussions, to be able to retell a past event to you, to tell you about something that happened on their weekend, to interact and play house with the other kids in the classroom when they're doing free time, right? There's all these different ways that we use language. And once we get to this advanced level, they know how to use the system that we've selected. They've got those basic wants and needs met. They've expanded out to some other functions. So now we're going to look at, okay, what are the other areas that we want them to expand their communication skills in? And we're going to support those. And again, the goal is going to be that communication skill, but the method we get to it is using that AAC system to support them, okay? So conversational skills, turn taking, asking and answering questions, maintaining a topic. We can do all of that on AAC just like we would with another child. We can look at expanding sentence structures into those grammatical markers and longer utterances. We can continue to work on self-advocacy and problem-solving skills. What do they do if they're in disagreement with somebody? Do they have the means on their device to negotiate and to go back and forth? That would be a good one. Using the AAC across environments, so using it in different settings as well. And then just any other, vocab, reading, writing, all of these things can be supported by AAC. So any other areas that we want to target. Okay? All right, I've got 25 of you in here with me. Welcome, guys. Pop over to the chat and either give me a question or give me a quick little blip about a kiddo that you're working with. Remember to keep privacy number one, right? So no names, no birth dates, no identifying information. But just give me some, a blurb about a kiddo that you're working with, and we'll see if we can kind of figure out where they would fall in these levels and what would be good activities. Or if you're having a challenge, tell me your challenge. I'd love to hear that. Okay, the other thing I want to touch on before I take these questions, but you guys go ahead and type those in, is our Gestalt language processors. So typically, at least the way I learned in grad school, was kids learn language one word at a time, right? First they say mama, then they start putting more words together, mama up, and they're pairing words, and then we build 3-word and 4-word, okay? So that's the traditional, as I learned it, approach. But there's this whole other group of kids who don't learn language that way. They're learning language in chunks called gestalts, and those are our GLPs, or our Gestalt language processors. And these kids are learning language in these whole chunks, these whole scripts, or these whole sentences where they are repeating a full chunk of language that they heard somewhere else or right after they heard it, and they're using that to communicate with us. So if you have a child that you know is a GLP, our children with autism are often GLPs. I don't know what the rate is, but I know it's higher than other kids. If you have a kid that you think is a GLP, you can program in whole chunks of language or even scripts from their favorite shows into the device to allow them to express themselves in a way that feels more authentic than just pushing one word. Okay, so keep that in mind too if you have some of those kiddos. All right, I have a student in middle school who will consistently hit one button repeatedly, and the teacher will take his device away or mute it so it isn't distracting the other students. I've explained that we should always let him have it, but also sympathize with her trying to manage her class. Any advice? Great question. This is hard. Okay, so we do want to allow children time to push buttons on their device randomly. It's like babbling for babies. They need to learn where the things are, and sometimes that's pushing them over and over again. Sometimes we have kids who, is my audio still working? Yeah. Sometimes we have kids who use it as a stim. Stimming is like getting self-stimulation off of something. They'll use it as a stim where they'll push the button over and over and over again because they like the way it sounds, right? And so that's kind of what I'm thinking might be happening here. And so the idea is this is their voice. And if another child were stimming, you wouldn't take their voice away, right? If they were making noises, you would not take their voice away. But it is hard when they're disrupting the class and they're disrupting their own learning because of it, right? So a couple things that we can try. We want to teach them when is it okay to do these things and when is it not. And we want to make sure there is a time that it is okay. If they're never allowed to do it, we're not helping them. But if we can say, hey, this is your talk time or whatever you want to call it, this is your time where you can use your buttons and you can push them and you can make noise, but now is a quiet time. Just like we would with a child who's making noises at circle time. I know this is middle school, it's probably not circle time. But just like we would do any other child who was verbally ticking or making sounds, we would teach them, oh, nope, now is a quiet time. We would use visual supports. We would use instructional, direct instruction. We would use social stories. We would use positive reinforcement when they are being quiet. And so all of those same strategies apply. Now, I also understand that it's the teacher's classroom, right? And she is going to make decisions. And so sometimes there are going to be times where it just has to be taken away. And while that would not be the choice I make, we also need to support our teachers, right? And we need to understand where they're coming from. So if we can work with the teacher to explain, okay, this is why this needs to be okay, and this is some strategies that we could use. Sometimes you do have to let them make that choice. And if that's the choice that's being made, we can just continue to support. Okay, but we're still going to try to teach them when it's okay to do it and when it's not, right? And you can help the teacher identify times when it's okay for the student to do that. And then potentially another strategy you could use, although this one's, make sure that the parents and the teachers and everybody agree, you could remove them from the situation. So if we're having a group activity and they're being loud, We could say, oh, you're not being quiet with your talker. You're going to have to come sit over here until you're ready to be quiet and join the group. And I don't know if that would work because I don't know this kid, but that's what we would do if it was a child who was verbally making sounds, right? We'd say, oh, you're being too loud for my friends to learn. I'm going to need you to come over here. When your voice is quiet, you may come back, right? And so maybe having an option like that. Becca, does that help? Okay. Okay, we've got a 3 and a 5-year-old with speech delay, can answer questions, tell their wants and needs, but need help with conversations and concentration and longer sentences. I've never used AAC. Okay, so probably not appropriate for those kids, right? AAC is going to be for those kids that can't get their basic wants and needs met, can't get their sentences across, can't do any of that basic communication, right? So what we would want to do for a 3 and 5-year-old who are having the kinds of troubles that you're talking about would be go through our screening checklist that we have inside the hub, inside the SLK framework. Start with those screening checklists and see if you can narrow down the specific areas, and then you can choose the therapy pathways that apply to those areas, but it won't be the AAC because that's going to be a different kind of kid. Does that help? All right, I love this. You guys have some good questions today. Okay, if you're still typing, go ahead and get your questions in. I'm just going to scroll back through here and make sure I haven't missed anything on AAC. Oh, I got another question. Okay. Working with a preschool student that is on the spectrum, minimally verbal, have used a low-tech core board with 36 icons. Okay, so that'd be a piece of paper, let's assume, with 36 pictures on it that are all different core words probably. Yeah, core board. Have had success. He requests using want, more, go, and different. Awesome. Would like to introduce a speech generator device. Do you have any resources or recommendations for finding an app or device that would work best? Awesome. Yes, great question. Okay, so my first recommendation is always the best AAC device is the one you can get. So I know that sounds like a cop-out, but most of the AAC devices and apps that you have to pay for, not the freebie ones, because some of the freebie ones are hit or miss, but the ones you have to pay for, they're all going to have similar functions. They're all going to have similar options. They're all going to have enough settings that you can customize it to be whatever you need for that student. And so if there's an app that you can get for free, or if there's one that they already have, they already have an Android tablet and you just want an Android app. Okay, which apps are available on Android, right? Because that's a challenge sometimes. Or maybe they go through their doctor and the doctor writes a script and insurance covers one, but it's a very specific type. Okay, great. That's good. Whatever you can get your hands on is usually the best option. But that being said, if you have options to kind of shop around, there are a ton of really great ones out there. My favorite one right now is Grid by Smartbox. That's GRID by Smartbox. And that is, I know that's on computer and it's on iPad. I think it's on Android too, but you'll have to look. And that one, it's, again, it looks very similar to a lot of the other ones, but I like some of the functionality. I like that they have a way to set it up for GLPs. I like the way there's like core boards that stay there, but then there's other ones that flip out depending on what kind of communication you're doing, so there might be some more social words that swap in, or there might be some more food-based ones if you're in a snack time. So I really like the features of that one, Grid by Smartbox. But again, there's a lot of them that are really good. If you are, I don't know, Ian, if you are a speech language pathologist, but most of the AAC companies will give the SLPs a free download of the app to try with clients because they want us to try them out, right? So we can definitely check that out, contact the companies that make those programs and ask if they have any demo accounts for SLPs, if that is your situation where you can get to try it. Okay, Sophie Ann's asking if that's the checklist that I was talking about. Yeah, start with the screening checklist for those 3 and 5-year-old. Start with the screening checklist and then move through the progress monitoring checklists as well. It'll lay it all out for you. Okay, I got 2 more questions. I'm going to take these questions and then we'll wrap it up. You guys are doing great today. I love all these questions. All right, my son is 2.7 years old, autism, using AAC over 3 months, touch chat. That's another really good one. Ian, you were asking about apps. Touch chat or Nova chat. So it's the same thing, but it's whether or not you're on an iPad or a dedicated device, but that's a really good one as well. Loves his AAC device. What are some activities we can use at home to help with conversation and having him use the device for requesting once? I love that. Great question. All right. So again, model, right? If you are using his device, then he is going to be more likely to use his device. So I would recommend getting in the habit of bringing it with you when you're going to do things, when you're moving throughout your day. If you can get a strap, a body strap where they can wear it, or you can wear it and then have it to hold out, right? Because it's a 2-year-old, maybe they don't want to carry that around. Maybe you don't want them carrying it around because it'll get lost. But having it with you a lot, and then just find one word for whatever activity you're doing that would be a good one to practice. Okay, so that keeps it manageable for you and manageable for them. But let's say you go to the park and they love the slide, okay? So you have the device maybe on your hip, across body, and you pull it out and you're on the playground page or whatever page has a slide button on it. And if there's not one, program one in if they like the slide. And then you just hit slide and you say, slide, do you want to slide? And then okay, we're going to slide. So they go up and they come down the slide and you're standing at the bottom with the AAC device and you push slide and then just hold it out and see if they want to also say slide, because they might repeat back that you said slide. And then the magic here, right? The next time they're bored at home, maybe if they remember going on the slide and enjoying the slide, maybe they'll bring you the device and push the button slide to tell you that's where they want to go again, right? So that would be my advice. Take the activities you're already doing, stuff that you're already playing with toys, and just find one button that might go along with that. Try to focus on those core words. I know slide is not a core word, but try to focus on those core words when you can. So maybe instead of slide, it was go, and you just, we're going to hit go, and then we're going to go down the slide. Or you're pushing them on the swing, and then you stop, and you push go, and then you wait and ask if they want to push go, and then they say go, and you push them on the swing again, right? So does that help, Janella? Is that helpful? All right. Came in late. What do you advise for texting or typing? I'm trying that now with a 12-year-old ASD. Oh, man. I wish I would have knew you were going to ask this, Michelle, because I just found one that I think I did find one that was typing, and it was really good for a teenager, and I can't remember which one it was now. Michelle, if you message me afterwards, I'll find the name of that one and I'll give it to you. But also just Google text to speech. If they just want to type, just Google text to speech. It's a tool through Google that's free, and you can use it on any device, and it would allow them to type and then it would speak the message for them. So that's the super easy and free one. But there are some AAC apps that are specific to text-based. Yeah, awesome. Okay, that was so great. Thank you guys for coming in with your questions and sharing that. If you have more questions, or if you're listening to this podcast and you have questions, you can come into the hub at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com, and you can go to the discussion board and type your question in, and we can all chime in and share ideas and strategies and resources. I also have those AAC boards in the membership in the hub if you want pre-made communication picture boards. We have courses you can take on AAC, and then we have this AAC pathway, which actually has therapy materials and activities that you can do for each of these different levels to help a student learn how to use AAC and learn how to expand their communication. So definitely check that out. Also, in case you missed it at the beginning, we do have an app version of the hub. I've had a couple people recently tell me that they've been missing the live events, which is partly my fault for not scheduling all of them. But if you get the app and you turn on notifications, then you will be alerted when I'm going live so you don't miss the events. Okay, that was a lot. All right, thank you all for joining me today. I will see you next time on the podcast. I think next week I just scheduled that. What are we talking about next week? I don't know. It'll be a surprise. Hop over in the hub, go to the event section and figure that out. But you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time on the Speech and Language Kids podcast. Bye for now.